At 20, I came top at Cambridge and got recruited by one of the best law firms in the world. 2 years later, I left everything behind and moved back in with my parents. My friends told me I was crazy for leaving such a dream job, but they didn't know the full picture. On the outside, I looked successful, but on the inside, I knew that I needed to do more. I'd spent my whole adult life training to become a lawyer, and now that I'd become one, something else was calling out to me. This is the story of how I left that $1 million job to go all in on an idea with my brother. Growing up, I always loved building things, and I looked up to great entrepreneurs like Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates. I had posters of them up literally on my dorm room wall. What they did looked so fun and also so crazy at the same time. But alongside that, what they did also seemed super risky. Both Zuckerberg and Gates dropped out of Harvard to build their startups. I thought that I could be like Zuck or Gates, potentially, but I didn't know that. It was just a shot in the dark, and I think we all know that feeling. Like, we know that it's possible, but we don't know that it's possible. They started off by taking one semester off, and you can do that at Harvard, but at Cambridge, which is the university that I was going to go to, you can't do that. You're either in or you're out. They say that 90% of startups fail, and to be honest, I just wasn't sure I wanted to take those odds. Growing up, I always felt lucky. I had parents who supported me, great teachers, a path laid out. Not everyone has that. So as a teenager, I made my choice. I decided to become a lawyer. Looking back now, it's pretty wild choosing a career path at that age, but in the UK, where I went to school and grew up, everybody has to make that choice at 16 years old. If you're a doctor, you've got to decide that at 16. So it's pretty early, and from that point on, I knew I was going to become a lawyer. But I was probably still pretty risk averse. I knew that I could code anything I wanted, so I didn't need to do computer science. And law felt like the safe, respectable thing to do. Everyone around me supported my choice, so I didn't really question it. I just put my head down and I worked. I won my scholarships at Cambridge University, got recruited by one of the best law firms in the world, and even became one of the youngest people ever to pass the New York bar. Everyone assumed I'd made it, but the truth is, I was quietly starting to wonder whether I'd made a huge mistake. I remember one day I was in the city watching everybody leave late from the office. Some were young, some were old, some were smiling, but most people just looked super exhausted. And I started wondering, is this what life looks like for me in 10 years? Sure, I kinda enjoyed law. The pay was great. I definitely liked the idea of being some sort of Harvey from Suits, but I still felt like something was missing. And I wasn't really a stranger to this feeling. Like, I kinda had this throughout university. I constantly had the urge to build something of my own. And I did. I launched a lot of things, but I never had the courage or maybe the confidence to go all in. Every time those urges came up, I'd bury them in some sort of excuse. I told myself I needed a safety net first. I told myself that I needed to complete law school. I told myself that I'd look weak if I didn't continue. And I knew that if I dropped out, people would think that I just burnt out or something like that people just wouldn't see me in the same light. And I guess those excuses were just me trying to cover up the truth, that I was actually afraid of failing. I just didn't know what to do about it. And I knew that I couldn't and shouldn't carry on like that forever. And then my brother called. At the time, Dom was working at Blackstone in New York. We both had our dream jobs, but deep down, we both knew that we could be doing so much more. If only we weren't so afraid to take that first step. And then it clicked. We both had each other. And if we wanted to start something big, we could do it together. Because if you want to do something meaningful, you have to go all in. We talked about it loads. First, when we were just catching up on family group calls, then every week, then every day, and soon every literally minute, we were just messaging each other with different ways that we could implement the idea, how fast it could scale, how big this idea could become. We became obsessed. I remember what it felt like to be excited by possibility and not just by stability. So I made the call, and I quit. And then I did something I never thought I'd do. I moved back in with my parents. When I told my parents that I quit my job, they were pretty shocked. Not angry, just confused. Which, to be honest, was probably a better reaction than I'd initially expected. At first, they couldn't quite understand what was going on. They were like, why have both of my sons thrown away their amazing jobs? And there I was, back in their house. No job, no income, not even a business plan for how we were gonna make this work. Literally just an idea. It didn't make sense. And suddenly, I was back in my childhood bedroom, wondering if I'd made the dumbest mistake of my life. That was the pit. The quiet judgment. The awkward silences at dinner. The fear that people were thinking, you had it all, and you threw it all away. We didn't have funding, we didn't have a roadmap, we didn't have a business plan. But we were locked in on our mission. We were building an app and we called it EasyA, and eventually we landed on the idea that it is today. We got really excited about how it was going to become the Duolingo for blockchain. We wanted to show young, ambitious people what they could do by learning to build apps and build on the blockchain and ultimately build their own businesses. And most of all, give them something that they weren't taught in school: the courage to create, to take risks, and to believe in your own idea. Dom and I had both taken the traditional path: law, finance, the safe route. But the system that helped us succeed wasn't created for everyone, and we wanted to change that. Those early nights of EZA were absolute chaos. Long nights coding in our childhood bedrooms, whiteboarding on the kitchen table, cycling around in the rain posting flyers, breaking everything, rebuilding, thinking that we'd gone insane. We probably had gone insane at some point. We probably were insane to do this in the first place. And the reason for all this chaos, all this madness, all this insanity was because there was one big problem. Our app was free to use, which meant that we had no way to make money. The typical startup school advice is to make sure that you're making money from day one. But our users were students, and so it was really hard to figure out how to do that. And we tried, but it just didn't feel right. I knew how lucky I'd be. Supportive parents, great teachers, doors that I could open when I needed them to. Not every student has that. And if we could build something that gave others a shot that they wouldn't normally get, how could we charge for that? But by sticking to that mission, we were making it way harder on ourselves. And I began to have the fear not only of what will people think of me, but also the fear of, what if this business doesn't actually work? We had no plan B. We tried everything. Targeting students directly, no traction. Then we tried government. Surely they'd want to invest in their own people's education. Still nothing. It was exhausting. We believed in the mission, but nothing was clicking. Every route felt like a dead end. And then, almost out of thin air, I met someone high up in the tech startup world who changed everything. He said we should work with the blockchains and our partners themselves to fund it. We offered to help get people learning about their tech. No pitch deck, no monetization model, just the raw mission. And somehow, they said yes. In fact, they offered to help support it financially. That moment changed everything. It was the first signal that maybe we weren't crazy. And from there, things really started to move. One partner turned into two. Word started to spread. It was addictive. And the more we grew, the more we saw the direct results of our efforts. And that made us work like crazy. Because we'd been through the tough times, when no matter how many sleepless nights we put in, nothing would move the needle. Now we were seeing results, and we would do anything to get them. This one time, we literally dressed up as astronauts and walked around in the baking sun, carrying this 4-meter long pole with a banner of EZA with a CTA for people to download the app, handing out flyers at the same time. We did everything under the sun to get attention around EZA and to make this work. Things gradually started to fall into place. We landed more contracts, we became one of the top apps on the App Store, and we even went viral a couple of times. We hadn't quite made it yet, but for the first time since leaving my law career, I didn't feel lost. I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. We've come a long way. Today, EZA has over 1 million users. We've hosted dozens of hackathons. We've given away over $2 million in prize money. And the startups that have launched on our platform are now valued at over $3.5 billion. And the community we've built is incredible. They've gone from not knowing how to speak in public to presenting on the world stage. From literally just students to building venture-backed companies. And from having just a few $100s to their name to having hundreds of millions. I'll be sharing more about how we built the business side of EZA in future videos, but honestly, that's not the real win. The real win is waking up every single day excited to build. It was taking the leap when everything inside me was afraid to fail. And if you're in the same position that I was in, feeling stuck, successful on the outside, but feeling super conflicted on the inside, I hope this gives you permission to trust yourself too. So if you're building something meaningful or thinking about taking that leap, I've made a video where I've documented literally everything that's helped me along my journey. Remember, don't think what's the worst that could happen, think what's the best that could happen.